Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's Development and Management Committee. Does any members have any... Well, actually, before we do start, let's have a quick introduction. My name is Councillor Mohammed Annan, and I'll be chairing tonight's committee meeting.
Councillor Sarah Cavan-Price and Councillor Polish.
Councillor David Jellier, Barrowford and Pendleside. Councillor Nadeem Ahmed, Barrowford and Pendleside.
David Whip, I'm a councillor for EB Courts Ward.
Councillor Andy Bell, I'm from Viral Bridge.
Councillor Yvonne Tennant, who's been standing at the downstairs desk for about 6 minutes. I'm a councillor for Marston and Southfield.
Councillor Mohammed Iqbal, councillor for Bradley Ward.
Sajjad Ahmed, councillor for Bradley East Territorial.
Councillor Yasser Iqbal, Bradfield West and Readley Ward.
Good evening, Neil Watson, Planning Officer.
Joanne Eccles, a Committee Administrator at Pembroke Council.
Thank you. Does any member have any declaration he or she wishes to declare?
No,
Thank you. Could we please approve the minutes of the meeting which was held on the 20th of May?
I'll move that, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, planning applications to start off 24/0876/HHO, erection of a single-storey rear kitchen extension at 49 Fountain Street, Nelson. We do have one speaker on this, but just before we do start, on all applications, each speaker is up to allowed 5 minutes to speak. So, Uzma, please.
Good evening, everyone. I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant of 49 Fountain Street, who's asking for permission to build a small single-storey kitchen and wet room extension. But this isn't just a home improvement, it's something she genuinely needs to live safely and independently. She lives with a serious disability, so she's been awarded a disabled facilities grant. That grant was approved because these changes, a ground floor wet room and accessible kitchen, aren't just helpful, they're essential for a health, dignity and daily life. Right now, the layout of the house simply doesn't meet her needs. This isn't about luxury, it's about being able to cook safely, use the bathroom and stay in her home. I understand concerns have been raised about how the extension might affect neighbouring properties, particularly in relation to the 45-degree rule. But I'd ask you to look at the full picture. Both houses on either side already have rear extensions. Number 51, right next door, has a full-length one, much bigger than what's being proposed here. The new extension at number 49 would actually be smaller than some that have already been improved on the street. And while the 45-degree guideline is useful, it's not meant to stop all development. It's meant to prevent serious loss of light or privacy, and in this case, that impact is minimal. The walls between the yards are as they are. There's no overlooking windows being added. So the proposal sticks to the character of the street and uses the same kind of materials that you see along Fountain Street. As for the policies cited, we believe that the application still meets both of these. It respects the local design, doesn't harm the area's character, and the size is completely in line with what's already there. In fact, larger extensions on the street have been approved with less medical justification. This isn't about bending the rules, it's about applying them fairly with some humanity. The Council has a duty under the Equality Act to make reasonable adjustments for disabled people, especially when it's about access to their own home. That's what this extension is, it's a reasonable adjustment. So today we're asking the committee to look beyond the technical objections and consider what this extension really means to someone's life. It's a modest change on paper, but it makes a huge difference in reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to the young lady who spoke. Can I just ask Neil a question before I speak then? So in terms of the 45 degrees rule angle, how greater an impact is it on next door?
Well, it elongates it a lot from both sides. There are windows at both neighbours in the gable in the main wall. So it will elongate it to 6 metres, so it's 2 metres beyond that which we would normally allow under the 45-degree rule. Let's get this right. It's already breached, but this is about the SPD says even when it's breached, 4 metres for single stories is okay, but this is now going to 6, so it's 50% above that. And just one point, the extension down the road which is referred to, one side doesn't impact on the 45-degree rule because there's an extension in between. And the other side was a replacement for an existing larger extension, because I looked at history up for it tonight, so that hasn't set the precedent on this street.
Thanks, Neil. Chairman, this obviously came to Nelson and Bradfield Area Committee last month. Well, it actually came a couple of months ago, and the Area Committee was minded to approve, so we delegated approval to the planning officer who was on duty, because I'm aware that where similar terraces have wanted to extend 6 metres, that we've allowed the 4, which is fine, but then the additional 2 has been on like a hip roof, and there are a number of examples in that area where we've allowed that over the last 5 or 6 years. As the lady has said, this isn't a kitchen extension as a luxury, it's a necessity. I mean, I visited the lady who lives at the house with her family, and at 4 metres it does not meet her needs. You know, she wants to live a quality of life that you and I enjoy and everybody else sat in this room for whatever day she's got left. Because at no point I think she envisaged ever becoming wheelchair bound to the extent that she is. And I think in terms of the impact of the 45-degree rule angle, it's already impacted. I mean, I visited the site yesterday, and I understand there was a site visit for other colleagues today, but I'm satisfied that because the 45-degree rule angle has already been breached, increasing it will have an impact, but I don't think it's greater an impact that one would expect. Because at 4 metres, the Disabled Facilities Grant people will not sanction a Disabled Facilities Grant for the 4 metres. It has to be 6 to accommodate and meet this lady's life. So I'm going to move that we approve this application and allow this lady to live some sort of quality of life that's decent.
Thank you, Councillor Iqbal. Councillor Yasser.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, can I just ask Neil 1 or 2 questions before I make some points? Were there any objections to this, Neil, from the neighbours? How many?
1, about loss of light and impacts on the community.
And is that from the immediate neighbour?
I won't reveal, it's one of the 2 names, yes.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to be, doesn't it?
Yeah,
fine. And in terms of the other point, when looking at the report, and looking at, sorry, the page is not numbered. When you look at residential amenity, I just want to clarify this because I wasn't on the side visit. I went to the other 3, but I couldn't make it to this one. It says, the 3rd paragraph of residential amenity says, however, while the existing structure extends to 3 metres into the yard, was the existing structure like a shed already, or what is it? What's existing?
Well, it's you said that the diagram above there, the existing structure at 1st floor is a sloping roof.
Yeah.
And then you see the shed below, that's very low, so that has no impact on neighbours, because the yard slopes down, you come down significantly. But when you see it's being proposed, it's lifted up, so it takes away the level at the back of evens it out, shall I say, so you're building on the level. So the impacts are directly on the neighbouring properties at height of their windows.
So because the height, that's the...
It's the length of it, Chairman. It just, we have an objector here. I spoke to the applicant on site today. I went to have a look at this, and my advice to committee is that the case law is you unless it's marginal and balanced, you do not take personal circumstances into account. I'll give you, if you were to approve based on that, there is a maladministration issue, because that's not planning policy nationally, it's not what the courts say, and you have an objector here.
And in terms of I think Councillor Iqbal made the point that, and I think you alluded to it as well, the 45-degree rule has been breached already. How does that change the position in terms of the case law?
But, Chairman, the 45-degree for single-storey extension, which effectively what this is because of the ground levels, we say, and the SPD says you can go to 4 metres, because that is acceptable, will allow that, even though there might be a breach of that 45-degree rule. What it doesn't say is if it's breached, then you go on to build 6 metres. It's 4 metres is where you stop then, because beyond that, then that does start to give them less of an outlook and becomes more oppressive in terms of their windows. So this is taking it to that extent. So 4 metres acceptable, but this is not. This is substantially larger. So to approve it, you would have to have a justification to offset your policy, to stave off any potential challenge, to say how have you looked at your policies, and just Just on this, a more sobering thought, we have now a judicial review in the High Court because we haven't. One of the points is we haven't considered the SPD properly. So you need to consider, if you're going to go beyond that, what is it about the SPD you think is different in this case? And I don't think it is. I think it's squarely in line with what the SPD is advising you not to do.
And I think, again, sorry, final question before I make some points. I think I'm not sure if it's the agent or the applicant who spoke. Applicant sister. She made the point about the other houses that they're not adjoining this property, they're further down in that same street.
No, one is.
The one next door's got the extension off.
It has, but then the other side is completely open. Where this is tunnelling it, and it will create that tunnel effect because that extension exists, so it makes it worse in some ways.
All right. Well, sorry, I thought my understanding was that that other property was further down. I didn't realise it was. I've not been to the
There's two. There's one that's further up or down, which is about 6 houses away.
Yeah.
That you don't see the extension from one house because of their own extension, so an impact on one side is okay.
Yeah.
Reading the officer's report for that other extension, it says that the one on the other side replaced the existing one. So that wasn't set in, it was just replacing something that was there before of a similar size.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Chair. Chair, I think it's always a difficult one for councillors when obviously we've got the policy, but equally when we hear, I was at the Bradfield Area Committee where this was approved against recommendation, and I think it's always difficult when we have personal circumstances. Obviously we're always told that it shouldn't be considered. But I think that the difference in this case for me is that, and I wish actually I'd gone to that one, that was the last one that I couldn't make it to, is the fact that there is a neighbouring property with an extension already. The fact that the 45-degree rule has been breached already, and this, obviously it's 4 metres, this now goes to just over 6 metres I think. And taking into account the personal circumstances, and that's not the main reason, obviously, for my seconding Councillor Iqbal's motion to approve. I think that's something that we do need to consider. And it's always difficult. We've been here many times in this committee and other committees over the years, and I've sat on this committee for many years now. We as councillors, I think the difficulty we have is that this is a lady who's clearly has mobility issues and requires this extension, and for them reasons, Chair, and the fact that whilst there is this potential overbearing impact, there is a neighbouring property with an extension, and I would second Councillor Iqbal's motion to approve.
Thank you, Councillor Yasser. Councillor Sutcliffe.
Thank you, Chair. I was pleased to go and visit this property because it helped put it in context and understand in context with the other two outreaches that are on the block. When we visited, actually, we went through the front of the house and stepped through and out of the kitchen. And it struck me just how steep the steps were there. So I can sort of understand the levelling out of that property. I think that kind of makes sense in terms of the applicant with the mobility issues. But it also presents the issues around the property as a whole, not just the internal.
So we're struggling to hear. We've struggled to hear the lady upstairs when she rang. I'm struggling to hear some of the conversations that are taking place, please.
So it's important to understand the property as a whole, not just the internal layout, which I completely appreciate is challenging for anybody with mobility issues. When I look at the plans here, we've got what's stated as garden, and I mean that in itself is questionable in terms of the scale and the size of that. It looks like it's around 900, if I'm reading the plans correctly, 900 millimetres in width, and that garden is currently used for storage. It's got bins in there and various different things with the storage building shown on the plans. Without that, then it becomes an issue that where would you store those items, and particularly the bins, because there's no, if I'm reading the dimensions correctly, you wouldn't have anywhere to store any of those bins in there as well. So that's a concern in terms of the layout of it. I've written down 2 words that I've heard from other people, well, one of them from public response and one of the words that was used by Mr Watson, both overbearing and tunnelling, and I completely agree with those phrases. In terms of the development, it would create an overbearing effect within that, not just for that, the neighbouring properties, but for the property that applied for this as well. And the tunnelling effect of having those two outriggers side by side, it would be a very narrow, dark corridor between those two places. There simply isn't enough space between there to get light in there, but also to function as any sort of useful space externally that would be needed as well. So I understand the applicant's need for internal space and change of layout, but balanced against the overall use of the property, I was concerned about how it would be used.
Yeah, just a couple of points I want to just pick up on. I'll pick up on Councillor Sutcliffe's points that he's raised. Just first of all, just going back to the point in terms of the neighbouring property, number 51, the extension is the full yard. So Neil, just for my clarification, in terms of this one, are you saying the extension at number 51, even though it's extended for the full yard, is because it's the end property, it doesn't have as much impact as that?
Yeah, and the neighbour of the other side also has large space, and then it goes on to a communal area. I couldn't find a history to that extension, but I think it's been there since.
So in terms of the recommendation, which is on the sheet, it mentioned due to its excessive scale, height. So in terms of height, what's the difference between number 51 and the proposal here?
I haven't compared number 51, but it is larger. But this is excessive in the context of the neighbouring windows. It's not excessive particularly in a street scene. It's excessive in terms of the impact on neighbours. That's what this is referring to.
And they mentioned and design. It says in the refusal and design, height and design.
Well, the design is just an added comment. It's not particularly anything that's bad about the design per se. We don't like the design. The design's fine and how it looks, but the design of it impacts on the neighbour. That's so it's encapsulating that.
So in terms of the points Councillor Sutcliffe has made in terms of the overbearing, so are we saying the proposal is far more overbearing than 51, the neighbouring property?
It creates a tunnelling effect. That's what we're saying effectively, that it creates that overbearing impact because of that and its scale, and it's higher than the neighbours as well. So it's higher in the yard area, and it will create a larger view, but also it will impact on. There's a lounge window and a kitchen window at number 47, isn't it?
Yeah. That's fine. Councillor Corbyn-Price.
We have been in this position before, and you always explain to us, Mr. Watson, that we need to consider the legacy of the building. Because if we make bad planning decisions in 100 years' time, when we're all dead, we will have made a legacy of a building. And obviously over time in the town, that has potentially, if we make a series of them, multiplied effect of bad decisions that changes the town. So in no way are we hard-hearted, but you told us that we can only consider personal circumstances if the balance is very close. And everything that we read in the report is that it's not very close. One thing I would observe is that further up the street there is a really enormous extension that looks like a small house, but we were told by the planning officer that that's two properties in the same ownership, so in fact the effect is only on their own selves, so to speak. And she also pointed out to me that on the side of the existing extension at 51 there is a window, and that window is a habitable room. And normally we say it doesn't matter overlooking a non-habitable room, we're more relaxed about it. But she made a point of pointing out to me that habitable room, and she said, so there would be very clear overlooking there. So we have overbearing, we have the 45-degree rule that's been breached on both sides. I don't know whether the worry that Ash has about bins is pertinent or not, but certainly it was tight in that yard. I do feel for the applicant, especially given, if you look at the street without knowing the history, you think, oh, there are some big extensions. But, as is so often the case in Pendle, you've got sloping ground, and that sloping ground makes it worse as well. We came down some vertiginous steps, and the overlooking window was higher just because of the sloping ground. That's just the position that we're in. So if you look at all of those cumulative impacts, I don't think that we have any choice but to very sadly say, in the personal circumstances, that we must turn this application down, and that's what I propose.
Councillor Whip.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just ask Neil, he mentioned maladministration, he's mentioned a potential judicial review, and in terms of maladministration, can you just unpack that and ditto with the judicial review?
Yeah, maladministration, Chairman. Why I mentioned that there was a couple of cases in Bolton Council, where it was slightly different. What had happened is that the councillors had not had regard to their supplementary planning documents, and the officers had taken that on board and recommended approval to schemes thereafter. And it got to a point where the Ombudsman got involved and said, you need to take on board your SPD. You're perpetuating the decisions, so you may have made one bad decision, and it led to them, £250,000, had to revoke the consents and made the neighbours take their extensions down at the back. So that's the maladministration point of it. The judicial review point that we've got at the moment, which we don't agree with, but it is a JR point that they've put in, is that if you've got a policy and you've got an SPD, why aren't you, effectively they're saying, why aren't you as a council considering that? Why are you ignoring it? And what have you done in your committees and your analysis to have regard to your SPD? And they're saying you haven't. This is a design issue, it's not a 45-degree issue, but that's a judicial review point. If you've got policies and guidance and you just ignore them, and you haven't got a reason to do that, then they think it's something that the High Court should look at.
Thank you, Chair. I hear what Mr Watson is saying, and I've got every sympathy with the applicant. If there were some wriggle room, somewhere which we could make a decision within the planning policy, I think the risk of maladministration or potential judicial review would be mitigated, but I can't see what that would be. So I support the refusal.
Councillor Bell.
Yes, I'm just looking at for these paragraphs for the residential amenity, and one of the paragraphs on here is stating the pitched roof. Now, with a pitched roof, I'm just need clarification. If it was a pitched roof, so the height wasn't as tall as it is on the inches, 3.5 I believe, or 3.8, if I remember rightly. The primary impact would be the increased height and replacement of the flat roof with the pitched roof, resulting in a larger, more dominant structure. If that had come through as a flat roof, would we still be having this issue with the 45 degrees? Yes. You would still be having that. I'm just thinking, is it the height that's with the 45 degrees where it's blocking natural light, or is it the...
It's a bit of both. It's not only, it's about your environment that you can see out of your windows, and your kitchen window with an extension there, then that gets elongated by, in this case, 3.7 metres. So we're now talking from here to the back of the chamber, perhaps a bit less, and then you to see that. So that's the overbearing presence. So it affects your outlook, your light. Light might not on its own be really confusing, but all those means it's impactful and overbearing on your. You shouldn't be sat in your kitchen or your living room in this case and having to see a tunnel. That's all. You've got some light and some sky to see.
Yeah. Like it's just I've just thought I'd get a clarification on that one where I've seen it mentioned about flat roof and then it says goes onto the pitch roof. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Iqbal, please.
Yeah, Neil, just to come back through the chair. So previously we'd said that, look, 4 metres isn't a problem anyway, in terms of the extension.
It's a reasonable compromise.
Yeah, the issue is the 2 metres. Now, we discussed at the area committee about a hip roof, and which I've said earlier. Why would a hip roof not cover the extra 2 metres? What's the issue there?
They could put that, but they haven't put an alternative design. This is what they've got in here.
No, they did.
I'm put on the spot quite a lot. Can I redesign this? I can't. They've got a picture of the chairman, and that's all I can give you advice on. They were asked if they could alter the design, but they haven't. So this is what's in front of you now.
So these amended plans that came in, were they not part of the hip roof?
They're the ones that you've got in front of you now.
Okay. Right.
Do we have any other speakers? No. Right, let's move on to the vote to the amendment which was for approval.
No, it's refused, isn't it?
Oh, Councillor.
No, but we take the second one.
Who seconded? Was it seconded by anyone?
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a vote on the refusal, which was moved by Councillor Coburn Price, seconded by Councillor Whip. All those for the refusal? All those against refusal? So now we're going to take a vote on to the motion which was carried by Councillor Iqbal. All those for, well, the approval which was moved by Councillor Iqbal, seconded by Councillor Yasser Iqbal. All those for approval? All those against? Does that fall to my casting vote then?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
It's up to you to cast your vote, Chairman.
I'll cast my casting vote for approval. So that's been approved. That's fine, thank you.
Thank you.
I hope that will cost us £250,000.
Right, second application that we have is 25/0169/FUL, change of use from agricultural storage to mixed use agricultural and commercial storage. Use class B8 at New Lawn Farm, Greenhead Lane, Burnley. So I'd just like to remind you again, it's 5 minutes, please. Could we first have the agent on this, please?
Good evening, councillors. My name is Luke Greenwood. I'm here to say a few words on behalf of Thomas Farmer.
Sorry, if not, could you shut the door, because I could hear you better then, sorry.
Yeah, I'm here to say a few words on behalf of Thomas Farmer, the applicant for the proposed change of use at New Lawn Farm. We note the contents of the case officer's report and wish to provide some clarification on the intended use of the building in question that will be of some assistance in your discussions this evening following the site visit earlier today. As a report and our supporting information advisors, we propose to use part of the existing agricultural building for overspill seafood storage of horticultural equipment associated with the applicant's family business, which has premises in both Burnley and Wakefield. This winter storage will generally take place between October and March, and for the remainder of the year, the equipment in question is out in use with the applicant's customers. No retailing or sales will take place from the site, nor will there be any visiting members of the public or staff. As such, there are no traffic movements in this regard. The recommended reason for refusal relates to the intensification of the use of the access and concerns regarding visibility. Please note that we have replied to comments from Lancashire County Council on this matter, and their subsequent response confirms that they do not object to the proposals subject to the imposition conditions. The equipment stored within the building is brought to the site in a piecemeal fashion over a period of time starting in October. It is transported on his way home from work using his own 4x4 vehicle and trailer. From that time onwards, the equipment remains in the building over winter, and again, it generates no further vehicular movements on that front. Similarly, when it's returned to the business premises in March for distribution to customers, it is removed in the same manner on its journey into work, one piece of equipment at a time. In this regard, there are no greater movements occurring than those currently taking place, and it would not result in significant or noticeable intensification of the use. We do not consider that the use will be materially more intensive than a fully operational agricultural enterprise, which will be unrestricted in its movements and generally result in larger, slower moving vehicles using the lane and the access. This application provides the opportunity to impose conditions to control the proposed use, such as the prevention of large vehicles such as HGV accessing the site, which the applicant by his own admissions is not wish to have around control. In light of all these factors, we please ask you to support the application and resolve to recommend approval this evening, subject to the controls suggested by LCC and any other relevant conditions that you see fit to add. Thank you for your time.
Chair, sorry, please ask a question.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lee, you said something about LCC. I didn't quite catch what you said.
Yeah,
you said that the objective of the...
LCC provided initial comments. We responded to those, and LCC revised those comments and said they were happy to support approval subject to a range of conditions.
Okay.
I think that's included. It should be included in the report.
No, I've not seen them there. Thank you.
Do we have that?
Chairman, the conditions that they're looking at are on, well, it's not paginated, but they are in there, and they are not open to members of the public, customers or employees, operation of the applicant's horticultural business and premises, as described in the application. The premises shall endure solely for the benefit of the applicant. So I've got comments to make, but this is for public questions.
It's okay, yes, then, yeah.
But those are the conditions that they're laying out.
Thank you. Anthony Singleton, please.
Fellow councillors, I live at the old farmhouse on New Lawn Farm. I moved into the borough about three years ago. I was in a more rural, quieter life as I fast approach retirement. Now, the lane in question is very light in terms of traffic. The only traffic that gets used is by residents or visitors to the cattery and kennels at the end of the lane. The neighbours are all respectful of one another and also respect the land on which we reside. Now, Greenhead Lane, which seems to be the issue here, is a very busy road. It's used as a thoroughfare from Burnley to the surrounding area, and as also stated at the last planning meeting, there has been a number of accidents on that road over recent years. I am the first house as you travel down the lane, and on the last two occasions have been a first responder. I've been a first responder seeing the carnage that happens, which is predominantly young men travelling at speeds of 90 to 100 miles an hour using Greenhead Lane in the early hours of the morning and late at night as a racetrack for themselves. It is not used by the majority of people for other purposes than just that thoroughfare. And there are very few accidents that take place other than the speed trap that's used by, as I say, predominantly young men. Now, at the last planning meeting, the applicant stated he would accept the conditions that were being placed by Lancashire County Council, and that he alone would be the person occasionally using the storage area as overspill during the winter months. The planner at the time stated it would be impossible to enforce those conditions. I disagree. We as residents would enforce those conditions. None of us, and we're all here tonight, want to see the lane used for heavy purpose vehicles. And therefore I would be the first to try and enforce those if it was misused. But that said, the applicant we know, the applicant would not do that because he himself and his family who live on New Lawn Farm don't want to see heavy vehicles used along that lane himself. Now, I was here some months ago and I attended a planning committee meeting whereby the planners at the time were looking to approve the development of the battery storage facility along Greenhead Lane. Some of you will have remembered that. Now, there was no issue raised at all by the planners who were looking to approve that at the time, re the safety of Greenhead Lane, or the gas line that runs parallel along Greenhead Lane. The use of heavy-duty lorries would be immense in terms of the first 6 to 12 months if that would have been approved, in terms of access required from Greenhead Lane, whilst that battery storage was put in place. Yet not one was raised about any issues associated with the safety of Greenhead Lane. So to end, this is simply one man using one car and a trailer that he uses every day to go back and forth from work, and it creates no additional traffic on Greenhead Lane whatsoever. The only difference here is that on occasions, through the winter months, that trailer may have horticultural equipment on the back of it. It's the only difference. And there's no different to any other current activity that is used along that lane currently, whereby tractors, trailers with livestock on the back of it is used already today. No difference whatsoever. So I just hope that this application is approved, because as a resident I have no issues with the applicant and what he's trying to do here. Thank you.
Thank you. Wayne Clark, please.
My name is Wayne Clark and I've lived at New Lawn Farm for 28 years. On behalf of myself and other neighbours at New Lawn Farm, I would like to say that I fully support this application and do not have any objections to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Zach Kay, please.
Hello, I'm Zach Kay. I'm a neighbour of Tom Spartner and I have no objections whatsoever to the application.
Thank you. Sarah Reid, please.
Hiya, I'm Sarah Seed. I'm at Robin Hill Cottage. Now, there's been issues with this building from the start, and the council, or should I say planning, have already put forward that the applicant has breached his terms and conditions of his building right from the start. When this building was put up in the wrong place and twice as big. Then it was went retrospective again because he was using it for commercial purposes, not agricultural. This building has never been used for agricultural. It's never seen a live feed, bale, hay or anything. It's always been used for his own personal business and for the business for their family. Where the council are aware of that, the planning, because as it says in their report, they've been caught several times, and as it puts, is not trustworthy at the moment to follow the policy, which is states in other matters on their report. Now, where court stands, because this client, or should I say applicant, in November 22 fought very hard to prove to everyone that this was used for agricultural, but it was refused, and the parish council put a very stern thing in to say it was used for commercial use. The residents put commercial to say it's used for commercial use, so it was refused in 22. Then in January 23 it was put in again, the same thing again. We said it was used for commercial, and so did the parish council. We was ignored again to say that we was giving false information through. Now, the trucks and the lorries sometimes come right up to my gate because there's no big of a place for them to turn around. There has been recent activity, and the planning have information on that, and they've got the evidence of that. This is why they've done again, been caught using it on unlawful use. But I'm glad the residents are here of New Lawn Farm, because regarding to the health and safety of these premises, they say they're happy with that. But I'd just like to hand out these papers that on the 20th of May 2022, all the residents of New Lawn Farm objected to a planning application which took place on New Lawn Farm, and they wrote a report regarding the health and safety. Now I think, is it okay to pass these to you?
Of course, yeah.
Now all the residents of New Lawn Farm signed this to stop planning, to say that the road was unsafe and they were concerned with traffic up and down there. Now this is from every single one of them. But they are now stating, because one of them wants the planning, that the road is safe. So they are contradicting themselves. The road has not been changed in any way. And I'll let you read the report. Have you all got one? Have you all got? And I'll let you read the report for yourself, especially section 3, which also the bottom paragraph.
Could I have one as well, please?
Sorry, yeah.
Oh, a bit left as well, so we've got
Now the black page at the back, it says at the top, that's where all the residents sign. And obviously we can't see that because it's data protection. But that's where they're all signed. But if you read the report, it states that the ladies will say it's a single track. The current lane is mostly for residents, fact of livestock and children cross that lane. This could become a health and safety risk. But they're now saying it's safe because one of them wants it, but when other people want it, they all get together and write a report about it. They also state, in paragraph 3 at the bottom, that the venture is not keeping up with countryside or agricultural. It's now, it's never been used for agricultural.
Could you please sum up? You've got 30 seconds left.
Sorry?
You've got 30 seconds left.
So I'd like the council to take a good look at this report, because this report has not come from me, it's come from the actual residents from upstairs. And one of them is the applicant as well.
Thank you. Councillors? Councillor Yasik,
Yeah, thank
please.
you. Can I just ask, just before, perhaps maybe through you, Chair Neil, Miss Seed has given this paper, Robin Hill Cottage Kennels, it's on Greenhead Lane. How far?
We're at the top, so you were out at the top.
Yes, I don't know.
So you go past and we were out at the top.
That's where Mrs. Seed lives.
Yeah, okay, fine. I do remember, that rings a bell, but I can't quite remember. It's further top, isn't it? Yeah, okay.
Sorry, yes. No, we took a right to walk down the hill.
Yes.
Just go straight.
Further on, yes, the next. Is it the next left or next right?
Well, you go past this complex of buildings,
Yeah.
and it's further down on the right.
On the right side, okay.
Two properties together.
That's fine, thank you. So one of the issues in this case is obviously on this particular road is speeding there, and that's been discussed a number of times in this committee, especially on Greenland. In fact, I've reported Greenland Lane as a speeding point of concern to LCC on a number of occasions, and in fact one of the residents up there, he mentioned the speeding, and he's right, this normally happens at night, and it has been something which the residents are concerned about, and so speeding is obviously one of the main issues that we have there. But I think one of the speakers made a valid point that when we had this battery farm application, I think probably about a year, maybe a year ago, around about a year ago I think it was, I can't remember, I think it was recommended for approval, and I think it's currently in for appeal, isn't it, Neil? Yeah. We've not heard anything back, have we, from the appeal? No. So just to give members an update, so that was an application which was recommended approval. We refused that application based on a number of points. The applicant has then now appealed. It obviously takes a long time, we still have that result. And that was one of the concerns we had at that point, and LCC didn't seem to have an issue at that point. Now, clearly they do. It's useful, I think, to go to site visits, and we had 3 or 4 site visits, and I only attended 2 or 3 out of them because I couldn't make the other one. But this was one I actually attended with other colleagues this afternoon. And it's useful because I think there's at least 6-7 cars that left unentered at a similar time. And I thought that was perhaps a good time just to look at what, if there was a increased traffic, what the concern, what the impact would be. And the other point is this, that we had an opportunity to look at the extension or the building, the outbuilding, and it was mainly agricultural, either tractors or anything of that like that was stored in there. And I personally, this when it came to the first committee, I wasn't against the application. I think, from memory, I think it was unanimous agreement on that committee to approve that application. And residents, obviously, and I know one of the residents is against it. But that time, the complex where this site is, so New Hold Farm, whatever it's called, is obviously a complex where there's at least, I think, 5 or 6 properties, maybe slightly more, slightly less, I'm not sure, that's the word count of them. Them are the people that are obviously directly concerned, and I actually thought when this came to firstly that the residents would be against it, because obviously they have to literally go past their house. It's only a small complex, 5 or 6 houses, it directly impacts them. But they're obviously here in support of the application, which is rare, I think, Chair. We rarely see that in these kind of committees, and I think that's something that we have to take into account, that the people that have seen this, and this is a partial retrospective application, so it's not a case of this is all something that they're anticipating, this is something they've experienced because of its retrospective nature. And the other point is in the application, which is that the main use of it would be in October and March. LCC have apparently put these conditions. I couldn't quite find them, but Neil's highlighted them earlier, where it would be only used for the applicant. There's nobody else that could access that property. There's no customers coming in and out. And that, I think, is a relevant point for us to consider. And the question really then is, looking at the reason for refusal, the intensification of the use of an existing access will have a severely substandard visibility space. Having been there, Chair, I don't think that this would significantly, and to use the word, severely is the word that's been used, severely substandard visibility space. And I appreciate that, and I've said on record before that there is a speedy concern on Green and Lane. I think, in fact, the speaker himself, in fact, he might have contacted me himself in the past. So I think that if that's the only basis for refusal, had there been anything else, then that might be different. Now, I hear what the other speaker has said in terms of objections, and that these residents might have refused on similar grounds. I can see there might be some other grounds in there, but I'm not going to get into what that was, but clearly that's something that I think we have to take into account, that there is a similar application further down the road which was refused. Neil can probably, if he remembers, can enlighten us as to what exactly the reasons for refusal were. Was it access, or was it this?
Which site are you talking about?
Sorry, this is the Robin Hill cottage, the one that Miss Seed has spoken about.
Yeah. So I can't recall the chair. It wasn't on access grounds, I'm sure.
It wasn't.
Okay. I can't.
I'm not putting you in the spot. I can't quite remember exactly what the reasons for the refusal were. So I think on that basis, having been there as well, that kind of has swayed my view on it.
Chairman, that was a certificate of lawfulness, if I recall now. It wasn't a planning application,
yeah, I think you might be
which
right.
is different. So that's a matter of law.
Yeah.
I do recall that.
Okay. So that was certificate of lawfulness, and this is obviously an application separately. Right. That's fine. So, Chair, yeah, like I said, it was previously approved at the area committee, and I would move for approval.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes. Councillor Corbyn-Price, please.
Thank you. So, Mr. Watson, if we were sitting here now and this building didn't exist, and the application was to come forward for a large commercial building in this location, what would Pendle Council's planning advice, leaving LCC to one side, be?
Well, it's in Greenbelt, so it will be a refusal,
right,
because it's not one of the purposes of that's inappropriate. That's not inappropriate development to erect a commercial building in the Greenbelt. Different for agriculture, because agriculture is not inappropriate development. The reason why there's no in-principle objection here that we're stating is that it's a change of use of an existing building in the Greenbelt, and that's one of the exemptions that you can bring forward that's not inappropriate development.
Though, of course, we have one person saying it's never been used for agriculture.
Yeah, and I've been there and there's been no agricultural activity.
Right.
But that's where we went through a couple of planning applications, one that was refused and then another approved where they substantiated the agricultural needs. So things have moved on since then.
So I live in Eastern Combe on Skipton Road, and there's a very similar parallel business that through Creep over years has built a really enormous commercial business on what is ostensibly what was a farm, and there was an enormous amount of traffic and disruption, and the family of one girl feels a death on the Skipton Road because of the growth of this business. But the years have gone on, so there's been an accretion of time, and I've spoken to Mr. Watson. He says the decision, such as it was, where the fudge was between agriculture and commercial, was so many years ago, it's almost lost in the mists of time, and therefore, at this stage, where we are now, in 2020, whenever I have a conversation with you, 2020 say, there would be nothing that could be done. So, potentially, we're looking at something that's now, but the parallels for the experience in Eastern Combe is really very, very similar. As time has gone on, that commercial thing has become a bigger commercial thing, and because it's been allowed to be, there's nothing that can be done for the local residents. It's not down to them to police it, it's not down to Pendle Council to police it really, it just is. And this building, I've shown Nadine the size of this building, it's virtually aircraft having a size. This is not a small operation. We appreciate we were seeing it largely empty in summer months, the agricultural equipment's gone off and is doing agricultural things, but this is no small commercial activity, it's no small building, it's not a small encroachment into the green belt, nor would it have the potential with a business is slightly altered to not lead to a large number of vehicle movements. And it's noteworthy that the report says no details of the floor area are given over to the change of use. The change of use have been proposed to be retained. So we can assume from that that there will be no agriculture in this enormous building, no details have been given. The floor area has 842 square metres, so it's a really, truly enormous building. And in terms of the speedy road that we went along, we do have to defer to the LCC experts. I don't know whether you need 120 metres or 77 metres, I don't know. But the point is, they do know. That is their actual job. They are telling us that they know. And it's a 60-mile-an-hour road, and they've decided to be very kind and say, we've looked at the traffic, we're not taking account of the boy races, we're looking at the 40-mile-an-hour speeders on this road. They're not speeding, they're within the national speed limit of 60 miles an hour. And on that basis, on the 40 miles an hour, we say they need 120 metres. I say that we have to believe them. I say that's the point of LCC traffic people. How cross are we when sometimes we know our local area really well and we're frustrated by LCC traffic people who say, no, it's fine. We go, no, it's going to cause traffic jams, it's going to cause a nightmare. They don't know our local roads. But here they do know the maths of the visibility display. And they're really, really clear. It's not close. 77 metres versus 120 metres. And the database indicates there's been a cluster of collisions, speed related, and the gentleman said, serious injury, one fatality. That's another reason, because we could be in another place in Pendle where there's something like this, with a similar road that has a bad reputation and similar accidents, and we could pass it, and we would have blood on our hands because we could be responsible for another accident in the future. I do feel that's why we should listen to the LCC officers. We have a thing here to say it won't be open to members of the public. There's nothing that can be easily enforced, that's quite clear. And for me, a sort of telling Well, if you just look at the office comments, increased intensity of use from a solely agricultural to a commercial B8 use raises wider planning implications, including highway safety. And then on the final page, and this, you know, with the enormous list of planning applications, this is the thing to me, where I look at the parallel on Skipton Knoll Road and the business there to see what happens if a bad decision is made, how there's a cumulative impact. There have been previous breaches related to unauthorised storage activities at the site. This undermines trust in the applicant's compliance with conditions, and the retrospective nature of the application raises further concerns. So, with all of that, with the record, the fact that it wouldn't be passed at all in Greenbelt were it to come not as a retrospective application, the fact that we should listen to the experts who talk about these visibility sprays and know those distances, we don't know them, they know them, I recommend and propose refusal.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say to Councillor Sarah, I've been reading through this as well, and I picked up on this display. But in the final paragraph of the consultation, the LCC have, as a caveat, have said they would be amicable to being agreeing to, as long as there's some caveats incorporated into the planning. One of them, or in fact, I'll even explain here. Condition 1 will be that development hereby approved shall not be open to members of the public. Customers or employees who live off-site, so the development operation does not generate traffic movement. So that will keep the just down to the population who live in that area, not bringing others in. The other one was reference to the use of Class B in the description of development. The use should be solely mixed use, storage and distribution to the operation of the applicant's horticultural business premises. It's to be granted but for no other use. And go on. If Mr. Thomas Palmer gives up land or dies, that planning permission is then rescinded. That's what I'm reading here. But I know it's going to be hard to actually enforce it. But we have to have that bit of common sense, and they've got to have that reasonable doubt that if one of the enforcement officers does turn up, that they can be proven to be keeping within that caveat as well. That's from LCC that they've put forward. Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Nadine.
Thank you. Just want to come back to the highway issues. I think we're kind of viewing contradictory information what's within the report and some of the comments which have been made by the speakers. So in terms of, just want to clarify, I'm just asking the question in terms of the number of accidents on this, Neil, if I may. So there have been incidents on this lane, haven't there?
According to this, yeah, but south of where the axis is.
Yeah, okay. So we're aware of 48 on that lane. Just in terms of the point Lee made, in terms of the conditions that could be attached, just can I see clarification on that, please? Exactly what would they be and how they would work in practice?
Well, this is a crux of it, Chairman, with this. If you have a quid pro quo, agricultural movements to movements in and out, then there's no real change. You're having the same vehicle movements in and out during the day. But, so you to look at the requirement behind that, because if Mr. Barmer comes in 16 times a day and there's one agricultural movement a day because he's moving machinery in and out, that's going to increase the traffic movements within that. So look at the use. The use agriculturally, and the applicant provides some case law, but there's distinguishable aspects to this. Brought a case about a livestock building. You're going to get traffic in and out with livestock building. They're not doing that here. It's a low-key agricultural use. That's why they're saying you've got capacity to use it. So it's a low use of this building because the needs of the holding don't require major agricultural movements. So then you go, what is the nature of the business? The business, the vehicle movements will be governed by the space you've got inside the building. So there will be more vehicle movements in my view than just agricultural, a low-key agricultural use. And the nature of those movements are off and onto site. Agricultural movements don't move that as frequently as that. Plus the agricultural activity, the 65 hectares is still being formed, is still being used, plus the building will still be used for agricultural purposes. So those agricultural movements might have been reduced, are still happening. So if you put a condition on to say it will only be used by, and this is the crux of it, by the applicant themselves, how do we know the vehicle movements are associated with that? If you need to move 15 machines in there, you'll move 15 machines in there. Whether that's done by him or not, there's still 15 machines going in and out of that. And in winter agricultural movements will probably stay the same because you bring in feed, etc. in. So the agricultural movements to me aren't compensating for the increase in. So put a condition on, what does that do? Nothing, because the business is running the same. It's just one person's bringing things in. To me, those conditions don't restrict the movements, except for not having staff coming on there to mill around and to visit and be generally there. So that's the crux of it. Does the way this is going to operate increase the vehicle movements? Because what we can do as Councillor Coburn Prices, we can measure the access, that's easy to do. We can measure the visibility splits. It is substandard. So if you have vehicle movements through that on a road that the members of the public speaking says people are flying down there at 100 miles an hour, and you bring your movements out onto substandard access, particularly north, which is the oncoming vehicles, that's an accident, an increase in danger on the highway. So for me, Chairman, this is a crux of the whole matter. Does the way that this is going to operate increase vehicle movements in and out of that axis? We say it necessarily will do, because there's a low base that you're operating from now anyway.
Thank you. That clears things up for me. I know it's not relevant, we shouldn't be discussing other planning applications, but just to try and understand, because I don't sit on the Nelson Barfield committee, but there's a previous application, the battery storage site. Is that further down?
Yeah.
Further down. So why did Lancashire County Council not object to that one?
But the battery storage doesn't generate. Building it will, and that's, I think, the points, if I understand the points were being made. You're going to have big vehicles building it. You do that anyway. I'm afraid that happens in construction. You can't get away from that. Housing sites have that, industrial sites. You manage that with traffic, management lights, etc. whilst you're building. But after that battery storage facility doesn't have vehicles in and out. It's not like an active business. It has low-key maintenance, so the movements in and out of that thereafter are minor.
Thank you. I think that helps me immensely in terms of what I was thinking and where I want to go with this. I think I'm happy with the information that's been provided in terms of the confirmation that we do believe that there will be an increase in vehicle movements, and the access is not adequate. I'm happy to go with the recommendation for refusal.
So are you seconding that, sorry?
I'll second.
Thank you. Councillor Tennant, please.
I was just going to say I'd second it if nobody else did, but they did. Just a couple of things, really. Councillor Yasser said we had, 5 cars there today and we had no problems going up that lane. We were all facing in the one direction. If I'm thinking in terms of that display particularly, if there's a vehicle coming out trailing an agricultural piece of machinery or whatever behind it, trying to get out onto Greenhead Lane, and somebody's trying to turn in a car,
it's just not wide enough, so you'd end up getting people stuck on that corner, and then if somebody comes down that bend or down that hill quite quickly, they're going to go straight into the back of the car that's stuck. So yeah, I would. Oh, the other thing was that it wasn't unanimously approved at area committee. And the other thing is, yeah, no, I'm going for refusal as well.
Councillor Whip.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm being pragmatic about this. As I understand it, there wouldn't necessarily be any increase in vehicle movements. What has been said is that the applicant would move equipment on and off the site as part of their daily commute to the workplace, and the County Council, in their comments, which Councillor Bell referred to, were saying if the use were limited to the applicant, then they wouldn't have any objection to it. So I think we have a situation here. It is a grey area. It's not black and white. I'm coming down on the side of approving this subject to the conditions suggested by the County Council and the limitation of use to the applicant in connection with their own business. And I'm not quite sure whether that was what was proposed earlier on.
Yeah.
Yes, I thought.
Yeah.
Is that what you have moved?
Yeah, that's right.
So are you going to second that, Councillor Whip? What?
Yeah,
Councillor Jackson. Thank you. Councillor Sutcliffe, please.
Thank you, Chair. I can't think of another planning application where there's been a comment from LCC that has said there will be a severe impact on highway safety. I'm racking my brains to think of one that was a severe impact. You know, there's usually comments of it could be unsafe, you may have to increase the visibility, so there may be this. But I can't think of an example where I've read there was a severe impact on highway safety. So I do have serious concerns about that. I know the road well, I use it well, and cars do regularly speed on there. And I accept what LCC is saying, that you could mitigate some of that via conditions. But they already have there is a national speed limit in place on that road that people regularly exceed. Everybody in this room is probably aware of that. Speakers have mentioned excessive speed, deaths by excessive speed, accidents by excessive speed. That's on a road that is restricted. If you put in conditions, it is in essence the same kind of thing. You're asking people not to do something. Will they still do it? Of course they will. I think that's the nature. And I think that what Mr. Watson was alluding to, saying earlier, was that we have no way of policing those conditions. There is no way that we would know how those conditions were used or abused or otherwise. We wouldn't be able to keep a handle on that. So that risk of severe impact on highway safety will not go away with that visibility display as it is. So though the concerns are still there, so I would be supporting my colleagues on the refusal.
Just one final point in terms of highway safety. I forgot to mention when I was speaking. We often see comments from Lancashire County Council reports, but rarely do we see reports where there's actual stated within the report that has been collisions and a fatality. So it just says here, there's been a cluster of collisions on Greenhead Lane to the south of the access, 3 of which have been speed related, resulting in slight and serious injury and 1 fatality. And I think hardly ever, I've never seen a report that actually says that in terms of highway safety. So there's no way I would be able to support this application.
I'm hearing the concern about the national speed limit and the fatalities which have been reported as being south of the junction. None of these, I presume, have resulted from something coming out of that junction. It hasn't been created by something coming out of the junction or turned into. These are people who have been driving down from the top to the bottom or on to the top of the lane. If this is such a severe impact, then my question would be to why has LCC not done something? If there is such a severe impact and they're aware of this. So when we're going down to, do we look at a planning permission for a junction where I believe nobody's had an accident so far at that junction. We've heard tonight that there is accidents at night time, there was racing at night time at the early hours of the morning. But the applicant isn't saying he's going to be walking down racing. These are inside. But the application we're looking at is, can we look at him working? If there is an issue with the speeding, then naturally LCC, who would turn around and say they've identified a severe impact and they should be taking steps for that stretch of road rather than impacting how we look at a business who is trying to generate income which is beneficial for this area. So I think, personally, we should disregard not the safety implement, but the LCC should take that responsibility rather than us at this level. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
I'm not a planner, but I just feel that I need to say that things grow up in Pendle, whether it's a winding road in Chawton called Cloghead or something like that. Well, no person today would possibly design. You'd not design it like that today. So there were loads and loads and loads of roads in Pendle, but LCC, they can't change them all. They are the roads that have been there since the 17th century, the 18th century, the 19th century. The question that we've got here is to do with intensification of use. So there is something that's suboptimal. It is in existence. We have this all over Pendle, don't we? It's in existence, it's suboptimal. The road near me is called Bent Lane. And it's Bent Lane because it's bent. It's the most stupid thing you've ever seen. It's got a 90-degree angle with little houses tightly up against it. It's called Bent Lane. You wouldn't design it like that anymore. But if there was an application that was to see the intensification of use, that constraint, which LCC can't do anything about, can't knock down the houses in Bent Lane, that constraint remains there. So here we see something that very clearly, you've heard Mr. Watson say, is an intensification of use. And then at the very end, it says there have been previous breaches related to unauthorised storage activities on the site. This undermines the fact that in the applicant's compliance with conditions. So we know two things. There's intensification of use, and we know that the applicant in the past, that is no prediction perhaps of future performance, as they always say for financial products, we know that there is concern about compliance with conditions. And yet this whole thing that you're supporting is actually standing on a foundation of the belief that that compliance will happen. And if you think it won't happen, you shouldn't vote for it.
Could we please take the vote on this, which was the refusal, which was moved by Councillor Yvonne and seconded by Councillor Nadine? All those for the refusal? All those against? 5. Shall we take the vote on the approval? Yeah. Could we please take the vote on the approval, which was moved by Councillor Yasser and seconded by Councillor Whip? All those for the approval? All those against? That's been approved. Thank you very much.
Chairman, just for clarification, with the appropriate conditions on
yeah, with the conditions which have been mentioned in the proposal. Thank you very much. We're just going to quickly go to the fourth application, which is the application change of use from a dwelling use class 3 to a children's residential home use class 2 for up to 4 number children at 534 Colne Road. This was the last one. Are you bringing it forward? Yeah. Okay. Did it? Sorry, Chair. Could I bring the agent Lee Greenwood to speak, please?
Yeah, good evening, councillors. I'm here to speak on behalf of the applicant for the proposed change of use of parking for on Road and Relay, which, as you're aware, is seeking permission for a care home up to 4 children. The officer's report this evening recommends approval, having considered the relevant local and national policies which are engaged in assessing such a proposal. It is understood that when considering this application for each area committee, the concerns were raised with regard to the level of illumination on future residents of the home, the perception of harm to the public, residential amenity and noise. A referral to this committee was made on the advice of officers as it was considered that there would be a significant risk of an adverse award of costs against the council should the agreement be pursued. In response to these matters, we submitted a letter to the council yesterday, primarily to highlight and draw attention to information already contained in the submission by way of the detailed document package, which includes a planning statement, community impact statement, a planning application statement and a vehicle movement analysis. We've also provided a number of appeal decisions issued in the last 6 months in which similar matters have been considered by inspectors, including sites in both Burnley and Hyndburn. With regard to future occupants, the home is to be for children in need of care between the ages of 4 to 17, supported by 3 members of staff working on a rota basis. The aim is to reflect a family home as closely as possible in order to ensure that these children benefit from a stable and supportive environment, giving them the best possible start in life, despite whatever unfortunate scenarios have led them to be within the care system. Placement will be undertaken by the relevant authorities and subject to rigorous assessment criteria with due consideration to the needs of the child and the suitability of the setting itself. Due to the size of the property, it will also be looked on favourably in placing siblings who need care, allowing them to stay together and living as closely to that as a typical home as possible. With regard to the perception of harm, the aforementioned documents provided with the application contain comprehensive information in relation to company policies, staff handovers, noise pollution, behaviour management, complaint procedures, staff employment guidelines and protocols, alongside an indicative rota and daily routine that is anticipated for the occupants. The site is gated, benefits from security cameras, and with all comings and goings fully monitored by staff and the management team, ensuring the safety of the children first and foremost, whilst also preventing any undue impacts for neighbours. Furthermore, such homes are heavily regulated by Ofsted, the Care Standards Act and the Children's Home Regulations, and controls will be imposed through this process and by other relevant statutory bodies where the need arises. The information submitted to the Council today is intended to reassure neighbours and objectors that the operator intends to run the home to the highest standards and takes their role seriously in providing appropriate accommodation for the children who will ultimately occupy the property. It is not therefore considered that the submission is lacking with regard to information on such matters and that there is other more appropriate legislation outside of the planning system to control some of the issues that have been raised. With regard to noise and residential amenity, the 6 appeal decisions we have provided each consider similar matters with the respective local planning authorities having refused applications on this basis. In each case, the inspector has been clear in that the nature and intensity of the proposed use must be considered against that of the existing lawful use, which in most cases is primarily that of a private dwelling. In each case, it was determined that the comings and goings of a typical care home would not generate concerns regarding amenity or noise beyond the use of the dwelling, insofar as it would mirror a family home as closely as possible in its operation. The site is surrounded by a variety of land uses, all of which contribute to the prevailing noise environment in the vicinity, and it cannot be said that a change of use from C3 to C2 at the scale that's proposed would significantly or unacceptably alter that profile or be of a magnitude that would warrant refusal on these grounds. A specific appeal case in Derbyshire in January this year considered these matters and also resulted in an award of costs against the council in question. In assessing residential amenity, the inspector advised that as a 4-bedroom dwelling, the appeal property could accommodate a family of 4 or more people. This would generate levels of noise and disturbance associated with the activity undertaken by different generations of the family. For example, parents coming and going from work at different times, separate activities undertaken by children, especially if those children are young and young adults. A typical family home would also generate activity associated with visitors and deliveries as part of its normal usage. Therefore, the activity associated with the proposal would not be significantly greater than if it were used as a family home. Any awarding costs in that scenario where the council was chosen to refuse the matter on residential amenity noise, the inspector concluded that In the absence of any objective analysis informed by robust evidence, it cannot be reasonably argued that noise and disturbance resulting from the use of the property as a residential home would be materially different to that of a domestic family residence. Indeed, in my accompanying decision, I explain why I find no basis to make objection on these grounds. Furthermore, the Council's Environmental Health Officers and Officer Report raised no objection in relation to matters of noise and disturbance. Under these circumstances, I am unable to conclude that the reason for refusal was informed by a robust objective analysis or indeed stands up to scrutiny on the planning merits of the case. Thus, I found that there was no reasonable basis for the Council to justify a refusal on those grounds. We consider the same issues at present at Colne Road with regard to the intensity of the existing proposed uses, which is corroborated by the views of the Council's officers in the report. Accordingly, if there was a refusal this evening, the applicant will seek to appeal the decision on similar grounds. In closing, as you discuss these matters tonight, I'd ask you to consider what a suitable location for such use would look like. It is understandable that we might not be directed towards higher density terrace areas where parking is limited and movements may cause issues in this regard.
Could you please sum up, please?
The committee recently considered the site at Avon Drive in Barnolwick not to be an appropriate location, which would suggest that other similar suburban settings are likely to be met with a similar view. At Colne Road, we have a property in generous ground with off-street parking, which can provide secure and safe accommodation for disadvantaged children who are amongst the most vulnerable groups in our society, with an opportunity to stable, supported upbringing, which still needs that they deserve. In view of all these matters, we believe this is an appropriate location accounting for those characteristics, and we hope that you can agree and endorse the recommendation of your officers. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Yasser.
Chair, this came to Bradfield Area Committee, was refused, and you've seen the reasons for refusal, which was the lack of information on and perception of harm and the noise and disturbance. And this committee will remember that the last DM meeting, the application of 20 A1 Drive came on, and it was refused on two grounds. One was similar grounds upon this application was refused at Bradford and Area Committee. But the second ground was in terms of parking and vehicular movement and parking on the highway. We heard from two residents last time, Chair, who came. I think you had the names written down.
We did, yeah.
For them to speak, but they haven't attended. And that was I'm obviously one of the councillors in that ward, and that was a concern that was raised by the neighbours. And that was a concern actually that I shared with the neighbours, and we've seen, have we not, in the last month, at least I've seen four different applications come forward for children's homes. And again, like I said last time, and I'll reiterate again, I'm not against children's homes. In fact, I support them. I just think that there are some locations where it's simply not appropriate, and I generally still think that the one in Barnoldswick last month wasn't entirely appropriate for where we were. I understand has that been appealed, Neil? So we'll be interested to see what the result of that appeal is. But then coming back to this application and the site visit, I went to the site visit, and in fact some of the residents have now been in contact with me, and I think they've been reassured by what they've seen since that last meeting, whether that's discussions they've had, that the assurances that they've received that this is an applicant who is familiar with this kind of application, this kind of business, and that the concerns and the interest of residents will be at the heart of, and then obviously the children will be at the heart of this new business venture. So that gives me some assurance that if the residents will be obviously happy, that it's very rare that we see that residents turn up to meetings and then retract their objections later on. This is what's happened in this particular case. But then when I went to the site visit today, and some of the points we raised at last meeting, and some of the members will remember that we had an issue with highways in particular, because this is on the main site, Colne Road. We were discussing Greenhead Lane before. Colne Road is well known for speeding issues. In that site in particular, where we've been lobbying for a number of years for a speed camera, in fact partially successful, where only 3 or 4 houses down, there's now a speed camera, a smaller speed camera, but there's something there. That's after lobbying after many years, because this is a serious concern, and that was something that was raised, because if cars are parked outside, that does cause a concern. But having looked at this, and obviously it's my ward, and I drive past and walk past this, but it took me by surprise actually how long the back garden is, and that there was enough movement for, I think they said 5 cars in the application, 2 at the front and 3 at the back, which would allay the concerns that we had initially about the highways issue. And you note that wasn't one of the reasons for refusal, because of that parking issue. And then the perception of harm issue, again, I think we don't want to be in a position where we are simply refusing every type of application for children's care home. I think the last one was a valid reason for refusal, and I think this particular one, having looked at it again, having considered the position, I don't think there's anything wrong in saying maybe that after considering the position that you have changed your view on the application. And I think that on this occasion, Chair, I think that having moved the reason for refusal last time, and having been assured by the residents, by the assurances they've received, and what Lee Greenwood, isn't it? Mr. Greenwood has just said, I think I'd be minded to move for approval of this application based on what we've received, what we've heard, and based on the site visit that we've seen, more importantly. So, Chair, I'll move for approval of this application.
Thank you, Councillor Iqbal.
Chairman, I'll second that and just make an observation. At the last area committee meeting, obviously one of the main concerns of colleagues was the lack of information. I think Mr Greenwood has gone into a great depth in terms of giving some more additional information, and on that basis I'm happy to support the application.
Thank you, Councillor Iqbal. Councillor Sutcliffe.
Thank you. Well, my gas is flowed, but I'm absolutely delighted to see that from the other side of the table we have a bit of support for our young children. I think that the last couple of children's homes that we've seen applications for were perfectly reasonable, and I said so at the time. The last one in Barnholdswick, I had a small cul-de-sac full of families where I would like my child to grow up, if I had one, would be the perfect setting. Councillor Iqbal said earlier, where is the right place? You know, this is not the right place. You can change your mind, I accept that, and thank you. But it's not the right place for a children's home to be. Well, where would it be? I mean, this is a secure property. It's a substantial size. It's a beautiful property, actually. It's close to lots of amenities. It's got a bus stop right outside. Once you jump on and go to school, these people are an active part of our communities. These young people are brilliant in some circumstances. Some with challenges. Most of them, on the whole, do not choose to be in that situation. We need to support our young people. Now, one thing that was said was something about the perception of harm from these young people. And I hate that phrase, the perception of harm. Not reality, just the perception. Because you're still saying you don't know who these young people are, therefore you must be scared of them. And as I said before, I said these exact same words, these are children, not monsters. They are young people who need a home. And that's why they are there. So, they live there and they should be a part of the community. Speed awareness, my first instinct, knowing Colin fairly well, was thinking, busy road that. A little bit like we said about Greenhead Lane, very busy, people do speed there. Would be a concern if there were young people around on there. Absolutely. But we do know that there's a whole average speed camera scheme going through there from Sainsbury's at Burnham right the way through to the M65 round at Bright Fields by B&Q. Brilliant. It's not just one speed camera, it captures the whole length of there. That is the best thing that we can possibly have for speed mitigation across that entire stretch of road. So that's brilliant. So I'm really pleased that you've backtracked, you've changed, you've done U-turn, and you've decided to support this. And absolutely delighted and wholeheartedly support this application.
Councillor Nadine.
Yeah, thank you. When I read the report and looked at the reasons for refusal at the area committee, I was really surprised as in terms of the reasons that were put forward, which neither of them were planning reasons, which is the reason why it's been referred here this evening. And I agree with Councillor Sutcliffe in terms of, I think the reasons, I know we shouldn't discuss the previous applicant, the one last time round, I've looked at the reason on that, and I think to say in terms of the perception of harm to the public, children and residential amenity, I think it's a really negative connotations to how we are looking at our young children, our vulnerable children. These children need the support and help of the local council and the local community, not being tarnished with labels. So I think that is not a reason at all, not just planning, but it shouldn't be a reason full stop. Second, in terms of the potential noise and disturbance, I think this is a large property in itself. If a family was living there, a couple with maybe 2-3 children, I don't see that would have the proposed use would have a significantly more impact on the use of the property itself. Parking again, and highways has been raised as an issue. Again, in terms of the activity between, there's going to be 4 children, 3 carers at any one time? 3 carers. So 7 people for a large property of that size, to have 7 occupants wouldn't be unreasonable for one family. So I think in terms of the comings and goings to that property wouldn't be much different. It's got the necessary parking there. So there's absolutely no reason why anybody should be voting to refuse this.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to refer to the last meeting we had where one was refused at that time. So this is a different house. It's got multiple occasions for little children. Having visited today, seeing the size of the garden, the views they have at the back, I think that is a more reasonable place for children to be, which is a safe environment, but also one that's not a factory, if you like. It's not built up, it's not enclosed where it's packed in. And for me, this where we look today, I think that would be an absolutely acceptable change of use for a children's home. Because actually said, we need to look after the children, they're not monsters. If they've got a good upbringing, or they feel safe and secure, they are very good. They will be developed into good human beings. Not human beings, no. They will develop into better human beings than some of the children who are being left as they are. So I think that this will be an absolutely fantastic change. So I will support this wholeheartedly.
Thank you. Councillor Sutcliffe.
Thank you. I just wanted to come back on something that I sort of missed out on. And it's not as positive as it was previously. Whilst I am happy to approve this application, bearing in mind this one and the previous one we had in Barnoldswick and the stream of recent applications that we've had, I think it's just worth us being cognizant of because of the low housing prices in Lancashire and East Lancashire particularly, the onslaught of property being converted into these kinds of homes, with children moving from outside of the area into Lancashire because we offer cheap housing, is unacceptable. And I say that it's unacceptable because I think it's wrong for children to be removed from their home areas elsewhere in the country into... Will we give them a wonderful home in East Lancashire? Absolutely we will. Is there anywhere better to live? No. But we should not be doing that for these children. We should be living in the areas where they grew up. We should be living in safe, secure places where they were. Not just because it's convenient for Berkshire County Council to save an absolute fortune by shipping their children halfway across the country to be landed in Lancashire. You know, that's not right. And I think it's something that we all, as councillors, should be aware of, and particularly the county councillors in that have some sort of sway in terms of the corporate parenting of our children in Lancashire. I think it's something that we really need to be aware of for their care.
Thank you. Councillor Yasser.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps continue the theme of agreement, and I agree with what Councillor Sutcliffe is saying. And we discussed this at the side, actually, and
that there's no need for this type of home in Lancashire because they are not housing people from East Lancashire. So but then that was still approved because it's not a planning reason for refusal. And Burnley councillors were in a bit of a conundrum because he said, well, you've got county council objecting, and then you've got Burnley council officers saying, look, there's not a planning reason. So it's a conundrum, and I think it's obviously emerging market. We're seeing more and more, some of them are experienced, but I'm not sure we can do anything with this particular application, but I think you're just making a comment. But I agree that in the future we're going to probably see more of these, especially the ones in busy residential streets. I think that's the difference between this and a busy residential area like the one we had last time. That was in my view, that was a slightly different one, and we'll probably see a few more of them in the future. But yeah, I do agree with what Councillor Clifford said.
Thank you. Let's move to the vote, which was moved by Councillor Iqbal, Councillor Iqbal for approval. All those for the approval? Refusal? That's approved. Thank you very much. Final application 25/0203/PIP, permission in principle erection of 3 rubber dwellings at the land to the southwest of Old Hall Close, Blackwell Bar Road, roughly. We do have 2 speakers. First, could I call Alan Kinder, the agent for this, please?
Good evening, Chair, ladies and gentlemen. The application before you this evening comes with a strong recommendation of approval by officers, given that the principle of development is fully in line and compliant with the relevant policies within the Temple Local Plan, and specifically policies SDP1, SDP2, SDP3, EMB1, EMB2, LIB1 and LIB3. The compliance with policy is further reinforced by the fact that the site lies wholly within the defined and adopted settlement boundary roughly, and as such the local plan seeks to achieve small-scale growth within Kendall's rural villages such as Rough Lake. The site will only accommodate 3 properties, and therefore there is not a requirement to provide a percentage of social housing as such. Given that this is a permission in principle, then all matters such as design, access, etc. are not for consideration at this stage and would come before the Council at a later date with the submission of technical details. And for these reasons, on behalf of my client, I would respectfully request that the committee fully endorses the officer recommendation of approval and grant permission in principle for this small-scale site within the village envelope, which will assist in achieving the Council's overall housing targets, albeit in a small way. Thank you.
Martin Schofield.
Thank you. Martin Schofield, I'm Chair of Roughly Parish Council. Roughly Parish Council have considered the above application for permission in principle for the development of 3 houses on the land of Blackwell Road. The Council notes that the main policy justification is based on the outdated course strategy which was adopted in 2015. To replace the local plan is at an advanced stage of preparation, as Mr Watts will testify today, and is scheduled for examination in public in the near future. The publication draft of the replacement plan has been the subject of prolonged and detailed public consultation, and the current draft is strongly supported by the Parish Council. The main policy changes which are relevant to the current application relate to policy DM11 of the replacement plan. This policy makes clear that the whole of the Roughly and Crowtree settlement are now included within the boundary of the Forest of Bowl National Landscape. Any development within the designated boundary of the National Landscape must comply with the criteria set out in this policy. These include the conservation and enhancement of landscape character. The application site is an important open area which contributes greatly to the landscape character of Roughly and its development for housing purposes, which damage the character of the village and be contrary to policy DM11. As the policy notes, small-scale development may be significant into the nature of the landscape. Paragraph 7 of policy DM11 does list 4 categories of small-scale development which may be supported in the national landscape. One of these includes residential conversions and rural exception sites. Clearly, the application process does not fall within one of the allowable exceptions. Now, I know Mr Watson was going to say to us, well, we can't adopt that policy because it's not enforced yet, but we were prepared to potentially take on a malpractice suit in an earlier application and ignore Mr Watson's advice then, so we'll pick up on that one later, I'm sure. So, we're getting on to sustainability and needs now. Rural needs planning refers to the process of shaping development in rural areas to meet the specific needs and challenges of those communities with also preserving their unique characteristics and environment. This involves balancing housing needs. Currently there are 5 properties for sale in Roughly, ranging from £210,000 to £735,000. Some of those have been on the market for more than 9 months. So does that mean we've got a need? Possibly not. Plus, there are currently 9 static home pitches being created adjacent to the village. That's another 9 properties, so that's 14 in total. Economic opportunities, none. And environmental protection, well, we've got destruction of a very visible open space, open green space. Given that we've had 10 new build properties or permissions granted in the recent past within our village, plus the 9 developments I've just previously mentioned, we think that Roughly has accommodated more than its fair share in meeting Pendle's plan for meeting housing needs. So I would strongly recommend that you follow your local representatives and refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nadine, please.
Yeah, this was discussed at the area committee meeting, and one thing which I think we've said at area committee meeting and at this meeting previously as well, in terms of the such application in terms of permission in principle, I don't like them personally. There's not a lot we can do about it, but not a fan, because we don't have the information that we would normally consider in a full planning application, and we can't take a lot of the factors that we think are relevant to the application into consideration when making our decision. Nevertheless, this site, historically in 1997, well, it's going back a long way, I think 30 years, application was refused and rules have changed drastically since then and changed recently, so never mind 30 years ago. We can't really compare what happened all them years ago to the current situation and the policies that are in place today. But I think the previous application refusal, I think the comments and the views are similar in terms of that there isn't a need for more houses in Roughly. We've had a number of developments there, and what we don't want is more development. In terms of the sustainability of the site, the area committee felt that the site isn't sustainable, and there's 2 real reasons that were put forward. Number 1, sustainability, and secondly, in terms of no real evidence that the development that there's a need for housing in that locality. So I'll move that we refuse this application.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
So, I read the officer's report and I fully share Councillor Ahmed's dislike of the pit, because we don't see all the issues. It seems to be sneaky. And I know we've got to operate within the sneaky rules, but it seems to be sneaky that you can say, I'm not telling you very much, except for access, yes or no. And then we'll look at everything else later. So none of us as councillors like it, because we like to look in the round. But reading the papers, I felt really clear that this was a pit, and therefore there was nothing we could do. And obviously the point of a site visit is to get some more info and look at the things that are around it. And I actually feel it would be actually heartbreaking to develop this piece of land. It's so prominent in the village. It's super prominent. And of course, if this was an actual planning application, we'd be looking at the heritage impact, wouldn't we, on roughly Old Hall. We'd be saying, what's the separation distances? We'd be looking at the public footpath and going, oh, the amenity is less. I'm sorry that the people of Roughly didn't do a neighbourhood plan and protect this as either a town green or a local green space, because it exudes that quality. It exudes it. But I can't give it a designation that it doesn't have, because it doesn't have any designation like that. But I was really, my ears pricked up, because I was at the local plan hearings earlier today. And of course, the planner's examination has some weight, doesn't it? It has some weight. So obviously this DM11 has some weight. And I wanted to ask Mr. Watson, what's the weight compared to the core strategy? And might this, in terms of greatly contributing to character and the fact it's in a national landscape, might this weight help in terms of this pit and this piece of land?
Sorry to be blunt, but no.
No.
We've got other sites that are in the national landscape that have come forward that inspectors have approved in Roughly. You have to protect land for a particular purpose to give it protection from individual applications and I suppose to protect them from a pit. So were this to be a designated village green or something of that order, then there would be a policy principle, but there isn't. It's in the national landscape, but it's not in a location that's been identified as being special, for example, that deserves protection per se. What you have to do is look at, it's in a settlement, we need housing across the local plan saying we need housing across the patch, rural and urban areas. It's not designated open space, it's got no specific designation. It has things around it, and I don't think the technical details is going to be an easy one to deal with, because you have to look at all these issues, but in terms of a principle, I think it actually, sorry to say this, I think it's actually quite a straightforward one. In a village, in a settlement boundary, the local plan DM11 will have weight in terms of how you consider it, the technical details, but it doesn't go to the heart of whether it's an in-principle approval. My only advice is that it is actually quite a straightforward one to deal with.
Oh, Mr. Watson, you're so depressing. I fully accept what you're saying, but let this be a thing for villages to do neighbourhood plans. They need to decide what is important to them and protect them, and also put forward sites for development like Chorlton's done.
That might be the difficulty, roughly.
Okay.
Sorry, I know I shouldn't, but does it not matter that we've taken our fair share of new developments within the area?
No.
Just for my own knowledge, could I ask why someone would apply for a PIP instead of going for full planning permission?
Jerry, it's quite strict with the law. I'm not a professional fan of PIPs. I think it can set house running in different ways, but it is what the law allows them to do. They're perfectly entitled to do that, and we can't argue against that.
If we're going to the PIP stage, the door is more than the jar for them to develop the land, it seems it's a bit, almost like it's a fait accompli. I know it's the law, but the law in this instance is just an individual ask, but that's my view.
Shall we progress the meeting a little bit? Councillor Yasser, please.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm actually in agreement with my colleagues opposite in terms of the PIPs. We've had a few in reading in the past, and there's literally no detail given at all. And it's just literally, here's a piece of land we want to develop. But looking at the reason for the refusal on the Barrowford and Western Parishes Committee, if this was a planning application, I'd know the answer. If it's a full application, that these are not planning reasons for refusal. In terms of PIP, does that change the grounds upon which I know it's still not good grounds because this is why it's come here, but does that change? Is the threshold lower, for example, if it was a pit compared to a planning application? In terms of these reasons?
It's like comparing apples with pears. You can't do that. Pits are different to outlines, outlines different to full applications. You've got hybrids in between. PIP actually is lower in terms of the need for information than even an outline application.
Yeah.
At least then you do consider more of the merits and general highways issues. The guidance really is, unless there is something that says that on that ground you will not approve it, you should leave the rest of the consideration, relationship, impacts on landscape, etc., to the technical detail design stage.
Yeah, I do remember a few years ago we had one in Relay. I'm not sure what happened, that we refused it initially, according to the grounds. But as you said, Neil, that it's a straightforward one from perspective. I've not heard anything else compelling, as eloquent as the speaker was from AV Council, or Offaly Council, sorry. I've not heard anything compelling to say that these grounds are at least arguable. These are just grounds of thing just to dismiss the application from here. I think it's been moved. If it has, I just can't support it on the grounds that have been put forward. If there's something else, then I might consider, but on the grounds that have been put forward, I simply can't support approval, refusal.
Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just out of interest, for clarity for yourself, this is a planning in principle, which is basically saying we've got an idea, we would like to build 3 houses, and we're saying tentatively okay. But until they actually do the technical and put everything through, if by that time the town planning or the Pendlebury plan that's being formulated, if that's enforced, and would that then succeed what they're trying to get through now? So the new planning system would supersede it as it was. So if they say you can't build there because of this in the new plan, I'm trying to be eloquent here. So if it goes through now today, it's the old system, and by the time they come to the actual planning permission, if it's gone to the new superseded system, it can be refused on if there were grounds in there.
It would, but it doesn't, so it won't, if that makes sense. It won't make a difference if there was somebody in there which would specifically preclude that. DM11, I think it's a good try from policy, but I don't think it takes you over the line. So it doesn't actually have anything in there which would lead you to an in-principle objection. So when it comes, hopefully when and if it's adopted, it wouldn't make a difference anyway.
So if it goes through after so the full planning permission goes through, or request goes through, we've got the new plan in place, that plan will not make a difference.
Not to the in-principle issues. You still have to look at, and this is why I don't think sometimes it's great, you still have to look at a lot of the constraints around there and the impact it has visually in relation to listed buildings. And for cases like this where there's going to have to be a reasonable design to come forward, it's going to get over all those issues. Sometimes PIPs might not be the best way to deal with it, but we are where we are with it. And while I'm saying it, and I'm not prejudging that, I'm just saying there are constraints which have to be looked at that point and designed accordingly. It would have been useful to have that. I think it will be a quicker process, but overall. But in terms of just establishing whether you can build on them, there's nothing in policy that I can think of that could lead to a conclusion that it should be done.
Yeah, just one more question, if for the chairman. If the planning permission PIP was granted today, is there a time frame or a time limit?
3 years, I think. 3 years.
3 years.
To go through, I think. No, to be honest, I've not looked at that down.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Mr. Kinder. 3 years it is, yeah.
Right. Okay, it's just like looking at that, but then I'm reading through it on here where one of the reasons why it was refused by Barrowfield Western parishes, it's not in a sustainable location. Surely we'd have to take that on board as well.
You could. We had a decision of a planning inspector at Whitehall Grange down the road where we recommended refusal to be improved it, saying that because they're local, you don't expect to have the full range of services in that area, and Whitehall Grange is in a defined settlement. Because there's a bus route, it was a sustainable location. And then we've had other appeal decisions at the other end of Roughly where inspectors haven't refused because of sustainability issues. So I think we'd be on a sticky wicket to try and say, in the face of those inspectors' decisions, this now suddenly is unsustainable.
Yeah, because when I was listening to the councillor, when he was saying that within the area, within the boundaries, they've got a numerous amounts of homes which are up for sale, and been up in the market for, I believe he said, 9 months. They've also got statics that have been built. They've also had other premises that have been built as well. But it seems like there's not a big uptake on actually purchasing these.
Let's wait until we go up to our new SM figure, 334. No, sorry, I've been facetious because I've been in the local planning commission all day for me today in that inquiry, but no, need for it in that location. Empty homes won't come into whether the principles are not acceptable. You can't look at it on that level of demand.
Could I possibly ask him, what is the definition of need then? If there's houses there that are occupied or can't be sold, then there's no need. That's just suggest that there isn't a need for them, or they're only be occupied. So what is the planning definition of need in your opinion?
The definition of need is your demographic assessed figure, which in our case is now 334 units across the area, and that is different than requirement. The requirement is what you may add on to that. So I only know that because we're examining on it today.
So roughly then, roughly is taking currently then, if there's 9 properties being built, that's already taking 3% of your target, which seems to be more than enough, given the size of panels and the number of brownfield sites available, the housing estates that are being developed.
It's not mine, it's the government's, let's
make
that clear, but the reality of it, if we were to make the 334, there'll be more needed.
Thank you. Councillor Whip, I do apologise, I didn't see your hand go up.
Chair, I wanted to ask this. I do feel that this has an impact on the character of the village. Many moons ago, I had a colleague who stood for Pendle Council who lived at Roughly Old Hall at the end, and going back all those number of years, I recall just how open the village is as you pass through the bottom of the valley there, and there are quite a number of static caravans, but they're all hidden away, and the properties that you see as you pass through Roughly are relatively sparse. So, it's very much fields interspersed with an odd house here and an odd house there. And of course, in very close proximity to this field, you've got the old hall itself. So I do question whether there's an argument that the principle of development should be resisted on the basis of the impact on the character and the landscape. And I wonder whether Mr Watson could comment on that.
Chairman, my view on that is that will be an assessment that you will make at the technical details consent, because you don't know what they're going to propose and how it would fit into that area and that landscape and how it will fit into the listed buildings. that is an assessment you will come to without prejudging it one way or the other at the technical detail stage.
Okay. Any other speakers? Right, I did have the refusal which was moved by Councillor Nadeem Orbit. Who was the second for that? Yeah, I thought there wasn't. Would anyone like to second that?
Sorry, can you repeat that? Sorry.
I had the refusal which was moved by Councillor Nadeem Ahmed, but I don't think no one seconded it. Councillor Ali, thank you very much. So could we please take a vote on the refusal which is moved by Councillor Nadeem Ahmed and seconded by...
Sorry, Chair, I think Neil might want to come in.
Do you want to come in, sorry?
Yeah, Chairman, on that basis, we as planning officers could not professionally represent you on that. It's so far removed from a defendable position, it would be contrary to my professional code of conduct.
Councillor Yasser, yeah?
I've heard this line before, and so that's not meant to be derogatory. He's right, because he will ask you to repeat. That happened to me.
I know, yeah.
And I think on this particular occasion, I think Neil's right, that on planning reasons, I don't think there is anything then. So perhaps the difference now is that these are recorded, so if Councillor Ahmed wants to volunteer.
We ignored advice on the first one.
Well,
we
sorry, Chair. Just to answer that, we're not bound by this advice, and it's for us to take. And I think that's right. There's no point being a councillor if you simply going to say let's stop, let's rubber stamp. That's my view, and I think this particular one. But yeah, we know my view.
What do you like?
We'll work on it together, Councillor.
Yes. Pro bono.
Yeah.
Anyone like to put anything, shall we just move to the vote?
Yeah.
That's fine, let's vote to the vote for refusal, please. All those for the refusal? All those against? So, that's lost, yeah. So now it's vote. So now I'm taking on the actual.
No, there's no motion on, there's no one's put anything else forward, I don't know.
No, no one else.
So just get approved.
Someone's to propose.
Can I move we approve this application, Chair?
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that, please?
Colleagues have gone.
Just so we get to heard, I'll second it.
No, thank you.
There you go.
Thank you. All those for the approval of this application?
Go second it. Yeah, no, but that was after a bit.
So 3. All those against? 3.
Casting vote, Chair.
Sorry, for clarification, Yvonne, did you?
She seconded it.
I seconded it so he could get it heard.
Yeah,
I didn't agree with it.
Oh, but now you're
Yeah.
against it.
I probably didn't go. That's how you got in.
Chairman, the applicant is in the room, so we need to take this obviously seriously. So it was 3-3 as I counted. You count that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So it is for you, if you choose to use your casting vote. If not, some other motion would have to be on the table. But you've already voted for and against, so there would have to be some other motion, and I'm not clear what that would be. So it's not
so
putting you on the
be
spot, Chairman. You can use it. I'm not telling you to use your casting vote, but you have that ability to do that now.
I'll just use my casting vote for approval, please.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
See you all again in 6 months.